Coming up on this second episode of Techspresso,
we're going to try to run Leopard on an unsupported Mac.
I'm going to make an Iced Americano.
And a little later in the show, one of our friends is going to be reviewing Army of Two for the Xbox 360. So stay tuned.
Techspresso.
Okay, welcome to Techspresso. I'm Sean.
I'm Marcel. And for our tens of viewers that are watching, we're going to try to do a few things differently. As far as time, we want to cut down the time that each episode lasts. And we also, having 2 episodes a month is probably unrealistic for our schedule, so we're going to probably just do 1 episode a month.
Yeah, and if you're just joining us on Techspresso, you know, because of the name, obviously, we really enjoy technology and coffee, so that's basically what we're going to be doing. So let's get started with our first segment. I believe you're going to make a Iced Americano.
I am. Let's do it. Here we are in the lab for the second time, and I'm going to make an Iced Americano today. You're lucky. And with spring coming around, I figured we should, you know, chill it up. You don't want to drink hot coffee when it's warm outside. That's just... So as you can tell here, we have a different thing for our espresso to come into as we're brewing it, and that's because Sean, dumbass, was walking up the stairs and it fell and broke, and now he doesn't have any money to go anywhere. But that's besides the fact. Okay, so Iced Americano, basically 10 ounces of water for 1 shot of espresso, and when you're making it, for 1 ounce of water that you put into the machine, you want 7 grams of espresso, right here. So that's exactly what we're gonna do. We're gonna make 2 shots because we got 2 ounces of water right here. Alrighty. Okay, so here I am. I'm going to fill this up to the 2-line in the filter. Now I'm going to pack it down for optimum brewing. Yeah. Alright, let's get this bad boy going. Let's put the cap on. We're ready to brew this bad boy. The coffee's done brewing, we're ready to get down. So, if you want to add sugar to this, which you probably do, at least I do, and it's really hardcore coffee, you want to add it now so it dissolves well. So here we have our glass for the beverage. It's been chilling with water and ice. And we have our ice here and water, which should be filtered. You can either drink or dump out the water. Now we're ready to make our final product. You want a lot of ice in this. First we're going to add that ice. Next we're going to add the espresso. Looking good. And finally the water. Top it up. And there you have it. A chilled coffee drink for springtime and summer.
So Leopard has been out for a while now, since the end of October, and I think it would be safe to assume that most of the problems and quirks that are usually associated with the initial release of an OS have been worked out with the 10.5.2 update. That being said, if you're lucky enough to have a Mac that can run Leopard, then it will probably be a good idea to update. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't quite meet up to the 867 MHz G4 processor requirement. Now I can see why Apple made this requirement so high, because it would be lying if you were to say that Leopard is a little more resource intensive than Tiger, but really Apple is cutting off a lot of computers that can technically run Leopard. So sitting right next to me is a PowerMac G4 8GP graphics with a 400 MHz G4 processor, 1.5 GB of SD RAM, a 10 GB hard drive, and a DVD drive. Now technically this computer cannot run Leopard because of its processor, but in reality it can. So today I'm going to attempt to install Leopard on this machine right here, right before your eyes. There are 4 ways of going about this. 2 easy ways, 1 relatively easy way, and 1 really hard way, which involves making a copy of the install disk, altering the code, which is not only probably above most people's heads, but it's not proven to work every time. So if you feel like trying to do it that way, Then follow the instructions here. There's 3 little pop-ups, with the URL. But as for me, I'll stick to the other 3 ways I'm about to discuss. If you have another Mac that is capable of running Leopard, like this one right here, then this first easy option is the way for you to go. To install Leopard this way, all you need is said Mac and a FireWire hard drive like the one I got right here. And yes, it does have to be FireWire because OS X does not boot from a USB port. And also, be warned, make sure you get everything you want off this FireWire hard drive that you're going to be using because the installer will erase the whole drive. Moving on. On the supported Mac, plug in the FireWire hard drive and place the install disk, Leopard install disk, into the drive. Now boot up the computer just like you are installing Leopard by waiting for the sound and holding down the C key to boot from the optical drive. Now the only difference comes when you get to the drive selection. Obviously here, you would choose the FireWire drive instead of the internal drive, which is chosen by default. Now proceed on with the install. Once the install is finished, shut down the computer and plug the FireWire drive into the other Mac. Now boot up into the fresh Leopard installer by holding down the Option key while booting. Now if you did it right, you should get a screen like this. Now, for sake of time here, I'm just going to be using my PowerBook down here in target disk mode that it already has Leopard installed on it. And then on the screen here, you usually would have 2 drives here if you have a drive in here that also has like Tiger or Panther on here, but the one in here is a cleared out hard drive. So we're just going to click on this one, click right there, and wait for it to boot up. Once booted up, the next step in this process is to use a program like Carbon Copy Cloner to clone the contents of the FireWire hard drive onto the drive in your Mac. You might get a warning about how it's downloaded from the internet. Just click open. It's a new feature in Leopard. Now with Carbon Copy Cloner, you're just going to select your source disk, which will be your FireWire drive, however you labeled it, and then you'll select your target drive, whatever that's labeled, and then hit clone and you're good to go. Once you reboot, you'll have a fresh installed Leopard right on your unsupported Mac. If you don't have a Mac that supports Leopard, then these next 2 options are for you. These 2 ways are pretty closely related, so I'm going to first do the relatively easy way and then the really stupid easy way. Okay, so this next relatively easy way requires you to spoof your open firmware of your machine to make the installer think it's installing on an 867 MHz G4. Here's how you do it. Start up your Mac while holding down Option, Command, O, and F to get into your open firmware of your machine. And in a few seconds, it should pop up. Now place the Leopard disk into the optical drive if you haven't already. Now type in these lines exactly, spaces, capitalization, everything, depending on your processor configuration. This is exciting, huh? Me typing in code. Okay, so you should get an OK after each line after hitting return. If not, you mess something up and you're going to have to retype it. And as you can see, the installer is now in fact booting up properly.